in jihadi organisation.
If you'd like to help Carlton keep producing the Black Spy podcast and receive episodes and information that's only available to Carlton's special Patreon agents, then you can donate as little as £3, €4 or $5 a month by signing up with Patreon. See the Black Spy podcast notes or Google Patreon Black Spy podcast and pledge your monthly amount. You can even win the opportunity to be a guest on the show. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe for free.
My name is Carlton King, and welcome to the Black Spy podcast, the show that shines a light on the world of secret intelligence, national security, and armed governmental personal protection operations, as well as the geopolitics that surrounds everything. This week is part 2 of the question that we looked at last week, which was basically cops and spooks. Why the difference in how they're perceived within our society, particularly in British society? And for those who listened last week, if you haven't, go back and listen to part 1. But for those who did, you could see the complete difference upon how they were perceived. Now we're going in a little bit deeper this week, Fergus and I, into the reasons why that might be. And we're going to look at the class system in the United Kingdom and the media and their perception as to who the blue-collar police are, and as they would perceive it, the upper-class spooks or spies are. Sit back and enjoy.
That's an interesting one. Look, in terms of putting it in terms of the police, now it's completely different for somebody in right. I think there's 2 elements, because I'm thinking as I'm saying. I think there's 2 elements. One is, right, I think that people in the security service, the Secret Intelligence Service, GCHQ, are fully and utterly protected by the state. Okay, so in the Intelligence Services Act, if I was out overseas carrying out an action on behalf of Queen and country, yeah, and it's authorised, then it's authorised. End of story. Full stop. Okay, so that's that. So now that's that taken care of. So they're protected. But the bigger protection is not that. You know what the bigger protection is? Britain is an out-and-out class society. And the vast majority of people in the Secret Intelligence Service, particularly case officers who are doing the job out and about, they are from the upper class, and the upper class look after themselves. It's as simple. I'm not calling the guys down and the gals. They do a great job. Work with them, great. But they're not going to come under pressure because they are perceived like the people who like them. So the people have been to Oxford and Cambridge with them. So Peston isn't going to be writing a negative story about these guys because he's been to college with them. Right? You see what I'm saying? These guys are, they've been to your school, right? So these guys are all connected, and but when it's the police, those same middle class, upper middle class, or even upper class individuals look at them and say they're above their station. And I'll give you one fine example of that. I like Ken Clarke as a matter of fact, former Home Secretary. I kind of like him in many ways. But I can remember Ken Clarke saying, why are the police going after motorists, fine, upstanding, I'm quoting him, British people, middle-class British people, when they should be fighting the criminals? So in other words, what he's saying is, this is you, working-class people, should be keeping these working-class people down, right? Why have you gone above your station and are now looking at the middle classes? That's what people hate. And people in the media, I'm sorry, I'm going to say it about you, hate the fact that these people, working class people, have got some power over them that they don't like them having. Right? They don't like it. They hate it. So they look at the police as a body that's above its station.
Well, yeah, it's a valid point, isn't it? It's a valid point. I mean, there was that mean, Dominic Cummings said this, didn't he? He said, Boris used to always call the Telegraph newspaper his real boss. But it's
got it in one.
Hey,
you've got it in one. Exactly that.
Exactly that, right? Exactly that. But at the end of the day, as we've said in previous podcast episodes, that police guy on the street is empowered to make that decision.
Yep.
So really, like the guy on the beat at Downing Street could have knocked on the door and at Partygate and
Yeah, well, see, the thing is, what happened with that is with Partygate, which is quite an interesting one, actually. The custodians, and again, the news media put that out incorrectly. They kind of suggested, because they just said security. Well, it's not. They're custodians. They're not police. They're nothing to do with police. They were the custodians. These are the fellas who have the keys, things on them, and the civilian people who are hired by number 10. And the custodian said something, and they were told to, move out of the way, mate. Who are you? Now, I'll tell you what I've seen with my own eyes for many. I have never come across, Mitchell is an individual who has not been somewhat sheepish against the police officer who's performing the protection role. They don't particularly like him necessarily. Some do. I got on with loads of people, but sometimes it's this. Well, how come this fella's got this type of power? How can he tell me this? What is he to tell me this? Yeah. So you see, this is the juxtaposition in Britain. The working class perspective is what makes the police, the blue collar, if you will, element is what makes the police the whipping boy. Or whipping girl, as it is now.
But Carlton, okay, but you've served and protected many governments,
Yes.
Not
correct.
just the Tories.
Correct.
But
I'm not just. This is not just Tories.
What I'm saying is it any better?
No, this is not just Tories. Right. I'll tell you how it works. The Tories, okay. Sometimes you get a paternalistic perspective that, these are all good fellows and they work for us. Maggie prime example, loved her special branch protection officers. And I literally mean that. She, you could not have got rid of the branch if Maggie was still in power. That would not have happened. She loved that. Now, there were people who didn't like it, but they were more paternalistic than many of them and kind of got on with the police as a general rule. The Labour politicians often perceive themselves as being under the branch's cosh. So I can remember people saying, very senior people in Labour Power saying, the branch has done this to me, it's done that to me, when it wasn't the case, right? So there's been this perspective that the police are acting as Maggie's boot boys, yeah, etc., etc., etc. Yeah. So you get that from both sides. One is from the left thinking class. Basically, what they're saying is these are class traitors. They're going against their own class. The left used to. I'm talking the working class left now. Now it's much of an amalgam now. Now you've got a lot of people in the Labour Party who are really, for all intents and purposes, not really working class at all. But they play towards the working class. But then, if you go back in time, there was more working class element to a lot of the Labour Party. Not all by any means, because I could tell you people who were lords, etc., who were, who were wealthy people who believed in the working class. But then what you get now is you get an irreverence on both sides, irreverence on the Tories and an irreverence on the Labour side in terms of policing, because it's an easy target to hit. The police is a very, very easy target to hit. Why wouldn't you hit it? It's a whipping boy for everything.
I guess so. Yeah, you're right. I mean, look, I've learned so much about policing from you that I wouldn't have known otherwise. You know, I mean, the fact that the police are accountable, the fact that they have the power to make arrests and all the rest of it. But you know, we can't argue with the fact that there is still that abuse of power
on some officers, absolutely. Look, I'd be an idiot to argue that every police officer is up forward and straightforward and blah blah blah. No, of course there are. But show me a job where there isn't.
Exactly. Just going back to what I was saying about the mental health thing. I mean, like, gosh, right, the rest of the world, like, you know, if you work for Deloitte or something, you know, or you're a trader or whatever, like, you know, every other week you're going on a like wellness retreat, or, you know, you're doing some, you know, or the, you know, the you know, the HR team in your company's going, oh, hey, you know, everybody's a bit stressed, so let's just all do some yoga, or oh, hey, like, let's just go on a company away day where we all do a silent retreat, or, you know, hey, we've bought everyone this self-improvement book or whatever, you know, because the rest of the rest of the working world is really, really focused on, you know, employee well-being, and it just sort of feels like you know, is what I'm asking you is the police force falling short on this, and is that the problem?
No, that isn't the problem, because and again, I'm gonna be very, very clear. The police is no better, no worse than anywhere else. That's basically what I'm saying. In some ways, you could argue. In some ways, you could have even argued it was better in some ways. You know, when I was taking I'll give you a fine example of it, okay? So I can remember the head of the counter-terrorism section in SIS. Great guy, obviously ruling elite guy, yeah? Super fella, excellent. And I remember him saying to me once, it's outrageous with the police and the institutional racism, right? And I said to him this is the point you need to take from it. I said, no name, obviously. I said, think about it. Other than me, right? Name me a black person, definitely at this rank, right? As I told you before, IB, so, you know, at the top level, definitely at this rank. Name me one. Indeed, I'm going to be truthful to you. Other than cleaners and kitchen staff, I don't see any. So tell me who's institutionally racist, right? And exactly the same when I was talking to some guy years later in the BBC, and I went to the BBC news stand, I didn't see one black person in there, right? Judges, okay? Up to very, very recently, I think there was one High Court judge who was black. So when these people all talk about institutional racism, my mother was in the National Health Service forever and a day. She came as a nurse, right? Promotion was not a given. You were not getting it, right? So when these people talk about that, please look at your own organisations. You know, it made me laugh when they came out with this institutional racism. I'm not saying there wasn't any racism in police. Of course there was. When they came out with it, you had people there from teachers. It was teaching, clergy, and NHS on that board who were looking into this whole case, right? They did nothing for their people of colour. Right? Nothing. Literally nothing. Right? So it's easy to say, oh, the police it, because they don't want to look internally, don't want to look at themselves. Right?
No, they don't. No, they don't. But I think where the institutional racism conversation kind of, you know, comes to a peak, you know, maybe justifiably, maybe not. But, you know, when Stop and Search came in.
Well, Stop and Search has always been in. This is the problem. Stop and Search has been a law since 1880, well, not even 1880, since 1829. Since the time of the Metropolitan Police started, Stop and Search was always in. Then they had the sus laws, right, that came subsequently. So what I'm saying is, Stop and Search has always been. But it is true,
though, Carlton. It is true that there's a heck of a lot of people who've been stopped and searched, you know,
who shouldn't have been,
for no reason other than the colour of the skin.
Absolutely, I would say that. Absolutely.
I mean, there was that guy, the guy in the Olympics. Do you remember the guy in the Olympics? He was watching the Ben's Relay or something, Afzal Akmal or something he was called, and he was detained, for like 24 hours, and they said at the time.
Well, that's not stop and search, is it? If you're detained for 24 hours, a stop and search is dead.
But it was. I mean, he got completely off, and the police had to pay him.
Yeah, but that's not stop and search. That's what I'm saying.
Well, that's what they
in stopping and searching people, you do not hold them for 24 hours. A stop and a search, and this is what we need to get the language right, because it's very important. A stop and a search is on the street. Somebody's on the street. You stop that person. You question them. Why are you doing X, Y, and Z? You search in outer clothing, outer pockets, blah blah blah. If you do anything more than that, it becomes a strip search. Okay, so outer clothing, outer jacket, blah blah blah, that's stop and search. What have you got? What's the reason for you being there? Boom, on your way, right? That's stop and search. That's 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes, really, nothing more, if that. Now, I'm not saying that doesn't happen. I'm not saying that doesn't happen racially, and I came up with a thing called the balance theory. Because you don't know anybody, because the average police officer was white, because that average police officer was not connected with any black people, all his image of blacks was what he'd been fed throughout his life, and that was generally negative. From that they're dumb to that they're thieves, they're this, they're that, and the other, right? So when he goes out on the street, his perspective was often that. His or hers perspective was often that. So that's what they were dealing with, and they were stopping and searching people based on that perspective. Right now, so they're down in Brixton, whatever, and doing stop and searching. Let's just say that. Now, that's what I'm saying. How many people were doing that stop and search? This is the point you need to understand. Now, I'll give you an absolute true story so you can understand it, where I'm coming from. I was in Rochester Row area, and basically what happened is, a sergeant who was a racist, absolute fact, who was not my reporting sergeant. I'm a probationer, but I've been a detective for the Americans before, etc., so I could handle myself. Right, so I've come in, and the sergeant, who, when I'm on there as a uniform constable, because you have to do 2 years uniform in your probationary period, he 6 months of which is in the training school, so it's about 18 months uniform you have to do before you can even think about doing any type of specialisation. So this guy, this uniformed sergeant, he calls me in one day, and I notice my reporting sergeant is there as well, right? So I said, yeah, what do you want, Sergeant? He said, I'm just stopping you because I've been going through your records of work. So when you stop people, you've got to stop, you've got to notify, you've got to put all there in your records of work, what you do, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so this is 1985, something like that. Right, hardly any black people in the Metropolitan Police Service. So what he says is, he says, I've just been noticing, I've gone through your records of work and I've noticed that you don't stop many black people. I said, all right. I said, well, what are you saying? He said, well, on average, he said, the average of stopping of black people on our ground, the area that they cover, is about, he said, I won't even talk about established officers. I'll keep it to probationers, he said, like yourself and maybe a few others. He said, it's round about 50 odd, maybe 60 odd %. He says, you're only stopping about 25, 24, 25%, a bit less. I said, right. I said, ooh. I said, well, thanks for bringing this to my attention, Sergeant. And the other sergeant, my reporting sergeant, he was like a cat on a hot tin roof. He was, bloody hell, he was frightened. He's looking all sheepish. He's a sergeant, he's above me, but he's looking all sheepish. This other fellow sat down on the side of a desk, all cocky. I said, all right. I said, thanks for telling me that, Skipper. I said, because what I'm going to do, Skipper, that's another name for sergeant, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the chief superintendent, person who runs the police station, and I'm going to say that I'm going to go to 10 to 12 Arlington Street. Now, 10 to 12 Arlington Street was the Commission for Racial Equality, right? And I'm going to go to Sir Erman Ouseley, whom I know, and I'm going to say to him, please take some action against me, because I'm stopping 25% of people on Rochester Rose district, which basically is Victoria, and there's hardly any blacks live there. I said, so I must be stopping everybody who comes across the bridge from South London. I must be stopping them. I'm not even mentioning the other guys now. I said, I must be stopping these fellas. Right? So I'm going to go to him next minute. I said, and I'm going to go to Sir Hermanus and I'm going to explain that something's gone wrong and I'm doing badly here, right? Next minute, the sergeant, oh no, don't be hasty. I was just saying, right now all of a sudden he's sheepish now because now he's frightened because now I'm saying I must be stopping a lot of black people. I shouldn't be. Now, this is the problem with policing, and this is what I wanted to explain to you. All you need is a nucleus of negativity. And what tends to happen is the people who are generally the negative ones, the ones who always have assault on police, somebody's always assaulting them or whatever else, oftentimes they may be bad guys, right? Or gals. What tends to happen is the rest of them, even though they don't want to do anything, they follow that guy or don't show out to that guy because that guy has a lot of influence, they think. So they don't show out to him, which is what you saw with the murder of the American in Portland. Just forgot his name. You know what I mean? He's strangled to death.
Yeah.
That's what happened. The other 2-3 officers, you could see they wanted to do something, but they were frightened to do anything against this other guy who was obviously the main player there. And so they stood back and did nothing. And that's your problem. But those pressures, this is the point I'm making, are the same in nigh on all jobs. You get the loudmouth, the guy who's popular, the guy who can make things happen, who can control the rest of the others. Now, what people don't understand is policing is not a matter of rank. Yes, there are constables, sergeants, inspectors, chief inspector, etc., all the way up the ladder. But the power in policing, in British policing, all of the powers you get sit in the power of the constable. Right? They're the ones where it says a constable may, a constable shall, a constable may require, a constable, all the laws talk about a constable. They don't talk about the commissioner. It's the constable that has the power. So,
yeah.
So they follow these loudmouths often. Yeah. And it's those loudmouths who need to be brought to book when they're there. And a few of them can cause a lot of problems. Believe me. That's the problem we have.
Yeah,
now,
no, for sure.
In my opinion, the vast majority of officers, in my opinion, I can only say what I've seen, are generally straightforward individuals. Right? Generally.
Sure. And just to go back to the George Floyd case, the Portland guy.
That's it. I forgot his name, Floyd. Well,
there was obviously a level of restraint that ultimately killed the guy.
He murdered him. Let's not hide it. He was murdered. I don't see any restraint there. There's no need for what they did in the story.
You can reference that there are a bunch of there are so many UK based cases that you can reference where the level of the level of restraint is arguably more than is needed. I mean, there was a lady called Lynette Wallace, and she was 7.5 months pregnant, and she was detained in a police cell for 11 hours, and they repeatedly punched her, and she was stripped down, and she
was repeatedly punched, right? There is no defence for that. Why would you punch somebody in a police cell?
There's no defence for it at all.
And I can't see how that happened when a cell's got cameras in it, etc., etc., etc. In fact, you must be a lunatic. Why would that? See, this is the point I'm getting at. And I thought we were going to go on cops and spooks, but we've ended up with more cops because spooks are given and they're okay.
We can go on cops and spooks.
No, but let's not. Let's keep on this because I think this is very, very good.
Yeah, but just to your earlier point though, Carlton, I just wanted to say, right? Okay, so the Met Police has got more, black and ethnic minority people. Like more police officers, but even they've only got 3.8% of their community. So what's going wrong? Why
Well, this is what happens when you make when the system Yeah, uses the police as a whipping boy and makes enemies. Right, because what you then find is this. Okay, you then have a crazy circumstance whereby they want to recruit 20,000 more police officers, and they're not going to get those in a month of Sundays, because who would join that game? Who now wants to join it? Who wants to be seen as a racist? Who wants to be seen as a dog? Who wants to be called down every day? Who wants that? Who wants it? So they've now created a circumstance where people don't want to join.
You're going back to the analogy of tapping people on the back at Eton, aren't you? It's like,
well, everybody wanted that, didn't they? Because, and let's be truthful about it. When they showed you James Bond and he slapped a woman across her face and did what he wanted to do with her and all the rest of it, nobody bat an eyelid.
Well, even okay. I know this is fiction. I know this,
and that's fiction. Don't get me wrong.
No. But I know this analogy I'm also going to make is fiction, and I was really stupid because it took me ages to work this out. But like, you know, I'm a mum before and I don't watch. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know the Sherlock Holmes, the Benedict
Cumberbatch thing. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So it took me ages. Like so the whole way that he solves the crimes by going into the mind palace. Like the mind palace is him on heroin.
Right, I don't really know the thing. I know of it, but I've never seen it.
So you know, so they have this whole thing about, like, you know, he's Sherlock Holmes, he's our hero, he's amazing, he solves all these crimes, but like he solves them because he takes heroin, and then that's how he thinks.
But he's not a policeman, is he?
Well, he's not, but he's aiding and abetting the police.
He's aiding and abetting police. But have you noticed that though? Fergus? Have you noticed that? What you find is the people who prevent, who in our modern literature solve crimes, are many times not police. It's the old lady down the road in Agatha Christie. It's this, it's that, it's the other. In other words, anybody can do that job.
But it's funny, isn't it? It's funny, isn't it? Because well, no, it's actually, it is really funny though, isn't it? Because like, look, like let's say you had Miss Marple or something. Like, who's paying her?
Exactly. But anybody can do the job. It's so simple.
But how does
a 2-year-old can do
make
it.
a living?
Exactly. But what I'm saying is, it's so simple a 2-year-old can do it. But when you then have your spies, no, they're not anybody. And this is what I'm saying. It's all about how you say this is who these people are. This is who they are. It's all about how that's.
So I know it's fiction, but in this fancified version of Sherlock Holmes, which, like, you know, you should totally, you know, Netflix, but he lives, so the John Watson guy, he's like a retired police officer, right,
okay,
and Sherlock and John like live together, but you know, they're not a couple, but they just sort of share a flat together and but Sherlock's brother then is like the head of, Sherlock's brother is the Home Secretary.
Oh, right, okay.
And he's also, like, he gets all these briefs from the chief of police, right, and he's always around his house, but he solves these crimes by taking heroin. And then thinking about it, and then going, oh right, I've thought of something that the police didn't think of because I took some heroin, right? But it's the same with James Bond, right? Yeah, like go back to the 1960s and 1970s ones, like, you know, the amount of times he like pushed a woman off a cliff, or like, you know, just oh yeah, like let's just do a quick rape scene, essentially, you know, whatever, like that wasn't fun, but just sort of circling back to the MI6, like, you know, what's a crime and what's not a crime. So if I had a fake passport, that would be fraud.
No, right. Okay, so now you're talking about. Okay, so yes, but you're. Well, no, the fake passport wouldn't be fraud by itself.
Ooh, tell me more.
No, just having a fake passport.
I want a fake passport. I don't want a fake passport.
Wouldn't be fraud by itself. What it may well be, or 99.99 times out of 100 will be forgery, because you'll have made a forgery of a British passport, right? So that's forgery, but it's not a fraud. It depends on what you're trying to do with it, right? So you got a fake passport. Great. What you're saying to what the officer's doing is he's not doing it for himself. He hasn't made the passport and said, "Oh, I've made my own passport." Excuse me, in the service. But by the way, the special branch had passports as well, driver's licenses, etc., all made by the state. They're not fake. Fake is a wrong word. Right? The passport is from the passport office. It's real. The driving license is from DVLC. It's real. They're not fake because they have to withstand somebody being able to check. So let's look. Let me give you the context. If you're in the right wing example,
duplicitous. That's the word, isn't it?
yeah, maybe, yeah, absolutely duplicitous, because it's a duplicitous business. And that's the beauty of what you're saying. If you're dealing in the secret world of national security or secret intelligence, the whole world is duplicitous, right? The whole thing's duplicitous. It cannot be but duplicitous. It is what it is, because half of the things that they're telling the public are not true. So let's take the Ukraine example.
Right,
let's just take the Ukraine.
Every now and then I chuck in a curveball question, which is just like a really dumb question, but I'm just asking you on behalf of all your listeners that desperately want to know this, right? How do you learn how to lie so convincingly then?
Well, that's part of it's part of the training. It's part of the trait of the individual. It's part of the trait of the individual. And when your life may count upon it, then you're going to be very, you're going to make it, you're going to do well. But the problem is, as I said, there's a price to be paid. There's a mental health price to be paid. There is no doubt about that. If you're going to be somebody who isn't you, particularly if you're going to do that for a long time, you lose you. So when people start saying, he did this or he did that. No, he didn't do that. The person did that, and that's who he was. His actual person had gone. Because that actual person, the actual person is a danger to you. Right? The actual Carlton King is a danger. Jack Jones, who you say you are, is not a danger. The danger's been found out to be Carlton King, right? So therefore, you discard Carlton King and you become Jack Jones. And Jack Jones is who you are. So you say you are who you are. Because otherwise you can get yourself killed. So the reality is that trying to return now to who you thought you were is the most difficult thing in the world.
Well, it is hard. It is interesting, isn't it? Because in the landscape of the media, there have been lots of sort of high-profile media personality suicides where they've said that the media. I mean, essentially, they've sort of said that the media's built them up to the point where they've taken their own life. And I guess the baseline is just that same mental health thing. It's like how far can you go? How far can you push yourself, and if you're if you're being Jack Jones that whole time, your soul is not Jack Jones.
Well, the soul problem is your soul might be Jack Jones. The problem is that your soul might be Jack Jones, Fergus. That's the whole point. Listen, I'll tell you what. I'll tell you something right now. If you have a mate, okay, who is not right for whatever reason, you will feel it. I'll tell you that right now. You will feel it. Okay? So what you have to do is actually be right. So you have to do what, to be what you're meant to be. Because otherwise people will feel it. They will realise there's something wrong with this fella. He's off, right? He's off. Something wrong with him. See what I'm saying? And you can't have that. So yes, let me give you the best example. What I would say is like this, and this is how it's Stockholm syndrome. This is how dead easy it is. When you go to school for the very first time, when you're 4, 5, 6, whatever age group you go to in when you were there, you want to make the most amount of friends you can as quick as you can, because you don't want to be the one left out. Throughout life, otherwise, actually, all of that tends to be done in a more discreet way. Yes, you want to make the friends, but you've still got some of you. When you're in this type of game, no, you want to be that friend again at the most urgent, because for any period that you're not, it's negative to you. So you throw yourself in, hook, line, and sinker. You throw yourself in.
So you mentioned the legend earlier.
Yes.
All right. So let's say you're undercover and your backstory is that you murdered someone.
I don't know why you'd have that, but yeah, go on.
Or well, let's say, well, I don't know. I mean, how dangerous do you need to be to get into a gang?
I don't think you need to be dangerous at all.
Just to
Again,
is that a misconception?
Again, you need to, no, it's not. It's not. But you're stepping over two different ways. You're stepping into criminal.
Okay. So
let's
take
political.
Let's take the
so you
BNP,
step into different ways.
Let's take the BNP. Like how you
have to be a rabid racist.
Right. So
or you have to be a rabid Islamicist.
So who
you have to believe it, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. So how like let's say how do they make sure that your bluff isn't called?
But you can't, can you? You can't, can you? This is the whole problem. You can't know when.
But is the onus on you to absorb all that information, or does somebody sit you down and say, right, okay, here's what you need to know?
There is no there is no sit down. Look, it all depends on how you. We're playing around with several different organisations, but let's say it's about the onus is on you to be able to work within that particular area. Same in SIS. If you're in SIS and you go in and you're generally you're not doing undercover that way in SIS. What you're doing is you're going to try and recruit somebody to your organisation, and you're going under natural cover. This is now if you're an MI6 guy. So I want to recruit somebody in, let's say, Al Qaeda, okay? And I want to recruit somebody who's got some importance. So generally, what I want to probably do is somebody who knows what's going down. It's no good me grabbing somebody who's just somebody who's going to blow himself up, because that doesn't mean anything, does it? Because what's he going to do for me? One thing, when he blows himself up, I'm finished. So I want somebody who's going to organise the people who blow themselves up, or the treasurer, or whomever, whatever. Right. So I'm working to try and recruit this individual. I'm not going to try and recruit him if I think he's not recruitable. So I'm doing a whole load of background, or having people do a whole load of background work on my behalf, telephone intercepts, this, that, the other. And then when I think this person is probably right, and I think I have got a hook to be able to come and recruit this person to my organisation, then probably I'm going out in a natural cover, which I've got a different cover, because I may not come at him straight away as British intelligence, although somewhere along the line I've got to be able to say to him, I'm British intelligence and this is why you're doing it. But right in the beginning I may not, and so I'm talking to him and I'm getting connected with him and whatever, and I'm getting a feel for him, but what I'm not trying to do in this line is to go undercover in that organisation. I'm not doing that.
Sure.
I'm trying to recruit that guy who's in there.
I'm just going to interject here and say, isn't it funny that person would be called a double agent, whereas in the capacity of the police they'd be called a bent copper?
Well, this is people not understanding, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is excuse me. This, what I'm saying is this. If you Okay, let me give you a better example. As a double agent, right? So, way back in time, I was working for the American, and I went to Berlin. It's the Cold War, right? So I go to Berlin, and and on the route in there, for whatever reason, I come off the road and I go to a place where you shouldn't go to, right?
And sidebar here. If anyone wants to read this chapter in Carlton's book, you can buy it on Amazon.
Yeah, well done. So I drive off. Excellent. Thank you very much for that. So I drive off, right? I drive off, and my car won't charge. So top of the range BM, and I should have been thinking. The reason why I mentioned top of the range BM, because I should have been thinking, because obviously they're running little Trabants. They're not running, highly technical 7 Series machines or equivalent thereof. So I go in and
imagine if it was these days and you had a hybrid car and you were like, oh my god,
exactly. It's equivalent to that.
There's no speed restriction on the autobahn, but I didn't think about that before. I only put like a quarter of
So it's not charging. So I go in. I said to the guy in the thing, can you do this? And he's talking with me and he's all interested and all that. Yes, we're speaking. And then next minute he's silent. This guy, speaking Dutch, he's silent. And I look behind me and I see 2 Volkspolizei, Eastern German police. And I go to my car and I say, officer, and he says, why are you off the Transitstraße? And I say, well, the engine, why are you off the Transitstraße? Right, so he said like that. I said, well, okay. So he basically says to me, cut long story short, get in your car, drive to Berlin, to West Berlin. If you stop again, you will be arrested. Right? Well, I know what that means. It's Cold War. It's bad. Right. So I drive through. I managed to get to Berlin. Took my car to get it looked at. So the very next day, it's okay. It's done. The very next day, I'm driving into East Berlin. And I'm at Checkpoint Charlie and I'm stopped. And they go through my car. And in those days, I was learning Russian and some other lingos as well. And so they see these tapes and they listen to them and like they do. And I had a tape recorded, a tape, a car tape, because it's like 1980 or something like that, which was also a CB radio, right? It was the rage then. So they pull me and they take me out of the car, machine gun toting guys. I'm obviously, everything's around 3 fire systems. You know what they had like in the Berlin Wall? You know what it was all like. So they take me into this room and they sit me down, and it's obviously a 2-way mirror, right? So I'm sat down there. And then this bloke comes from MFS, which is Ministerium für Staatssicherheit, which is a Stasi, and he says, right, you're a spy, you've made some mistakes, he said, but all is not over. And then he starts talking about, why would I, as a black guy, be working for the American? You're an American, the name you've given is incorrect, blah 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 blah. We found your credentials. I said, I'm not hiding my credentials. I'm an American detective. I've said that. I said, but I'm not an American. I'm an Englishman. No. You made a mistake. We found your credentials. You were hiding them. There's now a way around this. So these people hate you. They don't respect you. They've treated you, enslaved you. They've done this, that, and the other. We are trying to free your people throughout Africa, through Asia, etc., etc. You should work for us. So he's now trying to turn me, right? He's trying to turn me. See. Anyway, cut long story short, he don't get any word. At the end of the day, he realizes maybe I'm not who I said I am. Right. So I leave. Okay. He lets me leave. So I go into East Berlin anyway. We drive around, blah, 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 blah. And I'm being followed all over the place, blah, 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 blah. I go into East Berlin and I make sure I get back by dark. And I know the Yanks have seen me when I come across anyway, because they were looking through their binoculars and I saw, which is a comforting sign. So anyway, great. So I come back across. Report them to military intelligence, say, this is what happened, blah, 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 blah. When I get back to my base where it is, blah, 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 blah. Right, great. Okay. About 10 years later, just about 8, 9, 10 years later, the last minister president of East Germany, a fellow by the name of Lothar de Maizière, comes to Britain, and I'm given the task in the branch to protect him, and obviously to try and find out what his thoughts are on the unification of Germany. Okay, that's basically what it is. So I get on well with him, and we're walking around, and I've got the protection team with me, and we're walking about. And he says to me, I'd love to go to Shaftesbury Avenue because I'm a musician, and I've not been allowed to go to Wall Street, not Wall Street, in New York, not where all the theatres are. My memory.
Times Square.
Yeah, where all the theatres are though in New York. What do they call it?
Right.
Give me the name. I've forgotten it. Anyway, down there. He says, I've not been allowed by the American Secret Service to go there. They wouldn't allow me. I said, well, listen, nobody knows you, my friend. Let's go. Let's go to Shaftesbury Avenue. It's our equivalent and go and see it, and you can speak to the musicians, etc. He said, well, before I do that, I better just speak to my security guys, because he's got his security guys with him, East Germans, yes, Stasi, and they say, we're going to have to go to the embassy in Britain, the East German embassy in Britain, in London. So we drive over to the East German embassy, and as I enter the East German embassy, fella says, I knew it, in German, obviously. I knew you were a spy, and it's the same Stasi guy who had me, right? When I was in Checkpoint Charlie, right? So this is how the schizophrenic game is played of intel. People thinking they've got this, or they know that, or they're trying to turn you to do this, or you want to turn you to do that, and they use anything. And it's these little anecdotes that can turn you. These people's treated you like a dog all his life.
I hear you. I totally hear you, and it's funny, isn't it? Because it makes it super granular. It's like it's man on man at that point, isn't it?
Correct. I'm sure your parents went through this, by the way, in South Africa.
Yeah, absolutely. Loads of times.
Why would you be going the blacks when you can do that? The boss, Bureau for State Security, would have been speaking to him.
Yeah, exactly. But there's a part of this story that I sort of secretly love, which is that the fact that they had to listen to all those tapes with like how do I find the post office in Russian, and
exactly that.
My family and I would like to order a hotel room.
Yeah.
Because that's what those tapes were like in the 80s, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so look, I'm going to wrap this up with 2 questions for you, Carlton. I'm going to wrap this up with 2 questions.
Please do, because we're running over time.
If you had your time again,
yes,
and you could pick one, you could pick the police or you could pick MI6, what would you have done?
Well, I was offered to stay in the service. They offered me to stay there, and I basically said no. So that maybe answers your question. Not that I didn't like the work, not that I didn't like what I was doing, but I guess the reality is that I knew how long I had to do in the police service.
No, for sure. Okay.
It's a 30-year job. I knew I'd get my 30 years.
Maybe that does answer my question. Maybe that does answer question 1. Okay, question 2 then. In both your careers, what do you think would have been different if you weren't black?
Good question. I think that in terms of, and this goes for both roles, because in the branch you recruit agents as well. No different. I mentioned South Africa. We had a whole lot of South Africans living in Britain, etc. So you recruit agents as well in the branch. I think what being black and me, because you see, just because you're black don't mean to say that you think in a particular way or you don't. What being black and me let's just be even more granular than this, right? What do you think your career might have been like if you were that guy that was at Eton that was tapped on the back? Right. Okay. What I would say is, being black and me.
Would you have lived the life and had the experiences and done the great stuff that you've done?
Well, if I'd have been tapped on the back.
If you were that person, or would it have been a different trajectory?
If I'd have been tapped on the back at Eton, I don't know how I got there, mind, because it's like 30 grand a year, isn't it? But anyway, if I got tapped on the back at Eton,
you could have got a cricket scholarship. A bit more open-minded.
Yeah.
Can you actually imagine? Right. Yeah. I'm like I have this mental picture now of Eton like with a cricket bat. Like, anyway.
Yeah. No. Joking aside.
Do you know what?
If and this is what I'm saying, if I'm black and me, right? I always had an interest in politics, so I knew exactly what I wanted to go into. Right. So when I actually decided on policing in any format, and that was really only to be in the branch, then I knew that political policing was where I wanted to go. And so what I'm saying is, what I brought to the table was an understanding of what it's like to be somebody who doesn't have everything. So this is why I'm answering your question this way. Because if I did have everything and I was at Eton and I was whatever, I wouldn't have been able to say to people, particularly in the terrorist field, or understand people in the terrorist field, why they do what they do. If you've got everything, Why do you understand why somebody wants to blow himself up?
Yeah, I know, it's funny.
Well, you can understand it. Why do you understand why you're angry? Why do you understand why why you feel you've got to change the world? If you've got everything, this is why a lot of the guys
it's going back to that. It's going back to that, 2 words and 3 numbers thing again, isn't it? It's like if you're hanging out in a casino in black tie, just occasionally looking out for some mad Russians, but you've got all the weapons in the world. Well, what's your problem, really? As opposed to if you're that single mum that's being abused every night on the street and you're relying on the local policeman to come and help you when you call 999 or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different look. I'm not calling anybody down in any way. Everybody's different. All I'm saying is that the service, by that I mean MI6, the service was well adapted to the Cold War from the perspective of individuals who thought solely about the imperial situation that we were in. It's less adapted to try and recruit people who you have to understand in either one, trying to capture them in the branch, or in MI5, which is round about the same job, or to recruit them and turn them. It's a different game, because you need to understand why people do it, which is why that guy was good at what he was trying to do to me in Berlin. He was saying to me, why are you doing this? Why are you working for these people?
Right.
So,
okay, Carlton, let's round this up, right? I've got a fun idea. I'm just going to put this out there, right? Let's say, why don't we ask your listeners to share their positive stories with the police in any way, shape, or form?
you might
had a positive experience with the police. If you've had a positive experience with the police, and we'll reward the best one with a copy of your book. Let's ask your listeners to share their good experiences, because let's circle back to the to the problems that we've talked through with the police, but at the end of the day, it's at the end of the day, it's we're in a situation where we're in a position where we can improve the reputation of the police.
Sounds good. I don't think we will. I mean, there was a period of time. No, I'm being absolutely clear, right, because I think the forces levied against us from your industry are so great, that I don't think one good story to. Because what you've got to realise is, if you think about it, and think on this one, well, I'm going to leave you on this. In 20, 30 years ago, the police used to get the highest ratings from the public of any public service. Do you know that? Any
ratings where on like parts
in the United Kingdom? In the United Kingdom.
How did people rate by a carrier pigeon?
No. In the United, seriously, joking aside, in the United Kingdom, if you look at it, they used to.
Completely joking.
The worst. Do you know who were the worst?
Go on.
Actually, it was often a tie between journalists and politicians. And on that, I will leave you, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, right? No, do, but yeah, do. And honestly, just like what I would say to your listeners is that okay, apart from the fact that my children are apart from the fact that there seems to be World War II going on with my children, what I would say to your listeners is it is to actually personally go on a journey with their own mental journey with the relationship with their own police force. Yeah. I know I'm actually re-quoting Harry Styles, which I don't know why I'm doing twice in one podcast interview when it's Harry Styles.
Because you like him.
Well, Right, but don't fear the police, fear the criminals.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
That should be the point. If it isn't the point, and if it's the media's if it's the media's fault because they've called out, those small class, but also let's just circle back to that stat that 211 people out of the police force have a criminal record, right? Yeah. Let's celebrate the police. Let's do what, let's talk about the good things about the police. Let's celebrate the police.
Yeah, look, don't get me wrong. I'm not for whitewashing anybody, but what I am saying is just be fair.
Yeah,
and on that,
and no, I'm going to ask one last question before we leave.
Please do. Yeah.
Because this is like all my mum friends have said to me today, right? When I said, "Oh yeah, I'm doing another book," right? So that thing about when you're pregnant and you can pee in a policeman's helmet.
What's that about?
Have you never heard that one?
I've never heard of it. Is this something? Is this a given thing? Is it?
Apparently, right? It's a thing. Like it's a thing. It's on Mum's net. It's on like.
All right.
Like it's a thing. Like the it's apparently supposed to be a Victorian thing.
Right.
The reason why the policemen's helmets are shaped the way they are. But you tell me if they're shaped. You tell me if they're shaped the way they are for a different reason. But it's because a lady can request to pee in a policeman's helmet. So before we do the next episode, can you find out the definitive answer to that question, please?
I'll tell you right now, it is the case. But I'll look it up. Because that would be criminal damage. But I'll look it up. Nice one. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much again. It's been great. And Fergus, as always, what a pleasure.
Good night, Carlton.
Good night. See you again.
Take care.
See you next week, guys.
If you'd like to help Carlton keep producing the Black Spy podcast and receive episodes and information that's only available to Carlton's special Patreon agents, then you can donate as little as £3, €4 or $5 a month by signing up with Patreon. See the Black Spy podcast notes or Google Patreon Black Spy podcast and pledge your monthly amount. You can even win the opportunity to be a guest on the show. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe for free.
Here is a working class spy telling his stories, the secrets, the lives of spies. Feel free to message Carlton King on all socials and give this show 5 stars on Apple iTunes and subscribe so you never miss a single episode. For your ears only.
I was a member of Her Majesty's Secret Intelligence.